this little circle, that means a composition. Other times it might be written with parentheses. But you always start with the inside. So you'll take whatever x is, plug it into g, get that answer, and then plug it into f. Okay, and you can have more than two functions together. You just always work inside out. Start on the inside, get your answer, plug that into the next one. The domain of these we'll actually talk about tomorrow. So I'm just going to skip that for now. We're going to focus only on the compositions themselves. So if I told you f of x was 2x minus 3 and g of x was 4x, and I asked you to find f composed with g of 1. That could also be written as f of g of 1. You start on the inside with g of 1. If you plug a 1 into g, what do you get? 4. Then I take that answer and I put it into f. So 2 times 4 squared minus 3. So 4 squared is 16, times 2 is 32, minus 3 is 29. Order matters with compositions. If I switch this and ask for g of f of 1, you start with the inside, f of 1. If I plug a 1 into f, so 2 times 1 squared minus 3. So 1 times 2 is 2, minus 3 is negative 1. Then I plug negative 1 into g. So 4 times negative 1 gives me negative 4. So very different answers. You have to watch your order. You also can plug them into the same function repeatedly. If I ask for f composed with f of negative 2. You start on the inside. F of negative 2 says go to function f, plug in a negative 2 for your x. So negative 2 squared is 4, times 2 is 8, minus 3 is 5. Then I plug a 5 into my f. So 2 times 5 squared minus 3. 5 squared is 25, times 2 is 50, minus 3 is 47. I want you guys to try D. So we start with the same thing as g of negative 1. So you plug a negative 1 into g. So that gives me negative 4. And then I have to plug that back into g. So 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. So it looks like we did pretty well with that one. Let's try more than two functions. The idea is the same. You start on the inside, you work your way out. So on this one, the very first thing I have to do is h of 1. The other things just trail along. So I keep my f, I keep my g. I have to find h of 1. So if I plug a 1 into h, we get 4. Now we do g of 4. So if you put a 4 into g, so 4 squared is 16, plus 4 is 20. Now I put a 20 into f, negative 4 times 20, plus 3, so negative 80 plus 3, negative 77. You guys do B. All right. So if we start on the inside, that means first thing I'm going to do is g of 0. So that says you go to g, you replace all of your x's with a 0, and we get 0. Now, working on the inside, the next thing it asks me for is f of 0. So I go to function f, replace my x with a 0, and we get 3. Then it wants h of 3, so I go to function h, plug in a 3, 5 minus 3 gives me 2. Looks like we're doing pretty well with these. Are there any questions so far? So, we don't have to have numbers to plug in. I can ask you to find expressions, just like we did when we were adding and subtracting. Sometimes we had numbers, sometimes we just had an answer in terms of x. If I ask you for f composed with g of x, or another way it's written, f of g of x, you start on the inside. What is g of x? X squared plus 1. All right, now I'm asking you to find f of x squared plus 1. That says you go to function f, and I am replacing my x with x squared plus 1. Just like yesterday, sometimes we were doing x plus h. Okay, so whatever is in here, that's replacing the variable x in this original function. That gives me 3 minus x squared minus 1, 2 minus x squared. So B, g of h of x. Start on the inside. What is h of x? So g of that is telling me you go to function g, and I'm replacing my x with 2x minus 3. So to square that, we have to write it twice in FOIL. We get 4x squared minus 6x and minus 6x would be minus 12x plus 9 plus our 1. We get 4x squared minus 12x plus 10. I need you guys to try C. Well, here, so this means h of f of x. So starting on the inside, f of x is 3 minus x. You go to h and you plug that in for your x, so 2 times 3 minus x minus 3. So 6 minus 2x minus 3. So you get 3 minus 2x, or negative 2x plus 3. Perfect. All right, are we okay with those? Why don't you guys try one more? If everybody gets it, then we'll move on. So you put, this was g of f, which was 5x plus 3. So in g, you replace your x with 5x plus 3. You get 6, distribute the negative 2. 6 is canceled, so just negative 10x. All right, final thing I want to talk about today is working backwards from these things. So if I tell you f composed with g is equal to h, that means f of g of x is equal to this function, x squared plus 1 to the 50th. I am asking you to find out what f of x and g of x were to begin with, the original functions. Now, on these problems, there are multiple correct answers. You just have to have one equivalent answer. So what could my functions f and g have been so that when I compose them, I get this? My suggestion, the easiest way to approach it, start on the inside. What's on the inside over here? X squared plus 1. If you have parentheses, the inside is just in your parentheses. If you have a radical, it's the thing under the radical. If you have a fraction, it's like your denominator. Think of it as, if I'm going to plug in x, where do I begin? You would do x squared plus 1. That is function g. All right, now let's think about how we do compositions. On this one, when I had g of a function, I went to this function and I replaced my x with this thing, right? So we're going to go backwards. If I were undoing this composition, it would mean you would take that out and it would turn back into an x. There had to be an x there to begin with. So this function would be x to the 50th power. And we can check that. If you do f composed with g, if I take f of g of x, you get f of the x squared plus 1, and that is x squared plus 1 to the 50th. So you can always check yourself on those. There are other answers you could have done. You could have said like g of x had just been x squared, and then f of x would have been x plus 1 to the 50th. So there's not just one answer, you just have to have one answer that works. Let's try another one together. So f composed with g, that means f of g of x gave me 1 over x plus 1 for my answer. I want to know what f of x and g of x might have been to start with. So g is the inside. That's like what I'm going to do first if I plug in a number for my x. Where would I begin over here if I plugged in a number for x? X plus 1. So that could be my g. G is x plus 1. When you do a composition, you replace the x. So if we're undoing it, think about if I took that out and put an x back in its spot, what am I left with? 1 over x. So that is an option that would work. F is 1 over x, g is x plus 1. I want you guys to do this one. So, f of g of x is equal to 2x plus 3 to the 4th. So my inside is my g of x. So g of x would be 2x plus 3. F, think about if we undo that, if I take it out and put an x in its spot, f would be x to the 4th. All right. Seem to be doing pretty well on these. So this is our stopping point for today. Tomorrow, we are going to talk about domains. Today, you have a couple things to do. There is a handout on Google Classroom. That is due tomorrow. Then if you finish that, you can work on the Math Excel. A lot of the Math Excel questions involving compositions ask about domain as well. We'll talk about the domain tomorrow. So that one will finish up tomorrow and will be due on Friday. So the handout on Classroom is your top priority. That's due tomorrow. When you finish, you can continue your